but that wasn't part of the talk, okay? Because in fact, despite the widely held belief that Moscow purged the Mexican Communist Party for its failure to eliminate Trotsky, there's just no evidence to support that whatsoever, okay? On the contrary, the evidence is that the party was just racked with problems, okay? So as in the case of Andrei Runin, so with Trotsky in Mexico, political assassination is carried out by a very specialized group within the security police, okay? Now, why Trotsky's murdered will take me far afield. If you want to, when we want to talk about it, fine, but let me get to my second point, okay? The second is that we think of the Comintern, we think of the Soviet Union, the Comintern, all of its bodies, as a place that has not only the desire to centralize and direct activities, but the ability to carry that out. We find two very different outcomes if we look at what's going on here, okay? Central directives from the Comintern were supposed to be binding. They were supposed to be carried out, okay? But what I'm suggesting is that even within communist parties, all politics is local, okay? Or we want to call it national culture, okay? If we look at the Spanish Communist Party during the Civil War, the Popular Front and the anti-Trotskyist campaign worked together nicely because they were always about the war. They were always about a common goal. And so they complemented each other very nicely, okay? For Spanish communists, Trotskyist and Pumists sought to undermine the Republic's war efforts, okay? This was the crucial ideological divide among communists in Spain, okay? And that very divide allowed communists to ally with what we'll call bourgeois or petty bourgeois policies. For the communists in Spain, be they Trotskyists or not, anybody who opposed the war was an enemy. Could be a fascist, could be a Trotskyist, could give them another label, but the point is they were an enemy and they were a threat, okay? You go to Mexico, the same policies put into place in a totally different culture, okay? The Mexican party is told to forge the anti-fascist Popular Front by allying with groups, and it does that, okay? And in the process, it becomes entangled in a web of local political networks and practices that literally accelerate the kind of disarray within the party by pulling at its edges, okay? The party's Popular Front policy attracts a lot of new members. Remember, they went from 600 to 30,000, okay? But the ideological demands of anti-Trotskyism are just an afterthought to Mexicans. They don't see this as an issue at all, okay? Moscow may have demanded it, but Moscow's far away, okay? Now, what I'm kind of laid out for you here is really quite at odds with what a lot of people write about these two parties. And it gets me to a third, more general point, which I've been pondering, and so I'm just imposing it on you, but such is my privilege. Okay. About issues relating to U.S. historiography, the writing of history on the Comintern and fraternal communist parties. Okay. Because most previous studies of these Comintern and nationalist communist parties have focused on central directives and orders or compliance and purging, okay? And they've been valuable. I mean, we needed to learn what was going on in Moscow. We needed to figure out what the heck is happening in the minds of policymakers in Moscow, okay? But what's happened is that we've so focused on the top that we haven't started looking down below. The reason in the United States this is so true, I would argue, is because U.S. historians, and my generation for sure, Willard's, I think, spared some of this, but he was there for the great dawn, you know, of a new era. We're raised in an anti-communist society, you know. Everything from, you know, Orwellian novels, to Rocky and Bullwinkle, to Mad Magazine, to movies, everything centered around a kind of an anti-communist worldview, and it's not surprising that this lingers with us, okay? So what the general point I take from this is that if we want to understand how centralized let's put it this way, ideological imperatives affect people, we have to start to learn about it ourselves. How does it affect the actual act of writing history? And when you're students, you have to kind of think, okay, well, this person's teaching me this, but, you know, why should I believe this person? Why can't I believe what I read, you know, and whatever it is. The whole idea is, I've been ruminating about this because, of course, it's about national culture affecting people, whether they're us, who write the histories, or communists in Spain or Mexico, and we could go other places if we want. So on that spicy note, I think I'll just stop. I see none of you brought fruit, so I probably stop. Okay, okay, but I'd be happy to take any questions here.
Well, I just have to say that as it was very devious of you to end on a very subversive note, undermining my Stalinist authority by inviting members of the audience to critique the historical truth.
And this is very important, you know. This kind of critique from below is an important part of Stalinism.
That's right. So let's go. Any questions? Let's.
I don't know any of your names, so I'll just point.
Yeah, I just had one. It was a factual question about the Spanish Civil War. So the POUM was in Catalonia, in the north.
Primarily, yeah.
And then, so was Franco in the north and the Republic in the south, or was it reversed?
It tends to be, well, it's always changing. Originally, it's kind of, I should draw on walls. You know, Franco and his forces invade from North Africa. So they tend to come in through the south, near the Portuguese border, Sevilla, that area. First, and they tend to go up, let's call it that area between Portugal and central Spain, okay? Because other rebels in the north are coming down, and so the point is to join up so that the lands between Portuguese border and what's Republican Spain will be united. In time, they start sliding off to the east, that is towards, you know, to the Mediterranean. And the goal, of course, is to conquer Madrid. Because if you conquer Madrid, they figure they can win the war. Okay? They're unable to conquer Madrid, so what you get then is this weird salient where it's kind of like a backwards three. The north, you know, the Franco forces are in the north, and then they come around to the very outskirts of Madrid. You could literally go to the university and watch the fighting. I mean, they fought on university grounds. And then it goes back again, and it comes through the south. So it's not very, and it's always changing. And as a rule, the rebel forces, the Franco forces, are always winning. There are some setbacks, but yeah. And it's not going to be until the very end, late 1938, when Franco and his allies are able to capture Barcelona, that really almost everything breaks loose. The capital moved early on to Valencia on the coast, but the central coast. So it's just a kind of a vice-like grip that's coming.